Welcome everybody here on the panel and stuff. Huh?
Go ahead. Do it now.
Hello everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody here that showed up here on the panel and stuff. My name is Troy Pensmas. I'm of the Pacific North Central. Tonight we're going to have the great pleasure of having the track planner, Bill, tonight speaking about track planning. I'd like to let everybody know to keep checking the YouTube Model Builders websites at youtubemodelbuilders.com for all the latest news and the schedule info for the live show, which the next live show is May 21st, which starts at 9 p.m. Central. The eMag is also looking for any type of articles, anything you want to put in. You guys do not need to know how to go ahead and write. JD does a wonderful job on editing and stuff, so don't feel afraid to go ahead and start sending off some articles. The eMag will be out sometime in the middle of the month, and without further ado, here is Mr. Track Planner.
Thanks, Troy. Hopefully most of you guys remember the January show I did with the sawmill and the lumber camp. I'm going to expand on that a little bit tonight using Bill Graham's point-to-point layout. I think it's a good one to give you. It's a whole different way of operating on point-to-point as opposed to continuous. Bill has what I consider to be staging yards. It can be used both ways. I'm going to switch over to do a screen share here, and I'm going to need to know if everybody can see what I've got up on the screen. Can everybody see that?
Yep, we got it.
Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to use the South Brooklyn, and it's a point-to-point layout, and we're going to talk about setting up an operating session, and this is going to be from scratch. This is going to start at the beginning, and we're just going to go through the whole thing here. And hopefully, I mean, if you want a question, guys, go ahead and break in. I'll be happy to try to answer it. If you want to save it to the end, that's perfectly fine too. We're going to do a layout overview first. I'm going to talk about why I designed it the way I did. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of a point-to-point, pre-planning on an op session, things you have to be concerned about, industry capacities, the type of trains. Staging a point-to-point layout is a little different. We're going to talk about train descriptions, trains and staging as opposed to in Brady Yard. You'll know what Brady Yard is here in a few minutes. Operator descriptions, what the operators will be doing on the layout. And then at the very end there, I'll just briefly talk about, I think on Bill's layout, using car cards and Waybills would be far and away the best way to do it. Okay, this is Mr. Graham's layout. I'm going to blow this up just a little bit here so that we can get as good a view of it as we possibly can. It's a bedroom with a closet. The closet's over, as you see, on the lower right-hand side. We used everything we could use in this room. You walk into the room through this door up here. Hopefully you can see the cursor moving around up there. And first thing you see on your right is a staging yard. Bill just renamed that for Derek to the glass yard, which is fine. I consider it to be visible staging on the layout. The other end of the layout is 30 inches away from it across the aisle, which is Brady Yard over here. That was not an accident doing it that way. I could have just as easily taken Brady Yard and put it down here along this south wall there and fit it in there. However, what I wanted to do with this layout, because it was a small bedroom, I wanted to get as much main line running as I could on the layout, because again, if you remember some of my previous videos, one of the things about operation that's hard to create is time and distance here. So what I've done is I've created the most distance I can create between staging and the Brady Yard. What is Brady Yard? Everything on this railroad that runs anywhere on this railroad goes through Brady Yard there. Now, what Bill wanted with this layout is he wanted a heavy industrialized layout. Now, some of you guys also know that I'm a huge fan of less track is more. When I do a lot of design work, I like to have less track. That's not true on an industrial layout. You want to pack the track as much as you can because that's what happens in industrial areas. They put as much track as they can. We packed a lot of track into this thing here. Bill's wants on this was he wanted a couple industries that are really heavy-duty industries that are the primary revenue for this layout. The first one is up in the upper left-hand corner, which is the South Brooklyn Sand and Gravel Company that sits up there. That's one of the main industries on the layout. The second one is down in this bottom left-hand corner of the black building. That's the power company there. That's they'll just rename that Warren Street Power Plant. Those are the two revenue producers on the layout there. Other industries, again, the lollipop factory is over here. There's a lumber yard here. This is Genco Oil in here. And then this is, I think Bill named this 3rd Street Industrial Avenue or Market or something. But there's four industries sitting in there. All of these produce revenue, but not to the extent that the power plant does and the sand and gravel does. But what you're seeing here, which is important, is, and I can't overemphasize this, when you come out of staging, if you've got a train going to the South Brooklyn Sand and Gravel in the upper left-hand corner, it doesn't go there. It goes all the way over to Brady Yard there. I'll explain that as I go through some more of the slides here, why we do that. But any train that comes out of staging doesn't do any switching anywhere on this layout. It simply goes from staging to Brady Yard or from Brady Yard to staging there. And again, I created as much distance as I possibly could. If I put the yard down here at the bottom, I kind of glossed over that. I shouldn't have done that. If you put the yard down here at the bottom, that we would have had a very short run coming across the bridge here. Then we would have been right into the yard. Yes, we could have had all this be industries over here. Trains could have run over there. But you would have had this really, really short mainline run, which I didn't like. I've given Bill the longest run he can possibly have there. Now, these two tracks that you see right under the word Brady Yard, those are important tracks. It looks like I just threw them in there just to be there. Those are the make-up tracks. Those are the tracks that we would use to make up trains to leave Brady Yard. Right here, where I got the little cursor, is a double slip switch, so that this yard can be worked either using the outside track or what I consider to be the yard lead, which is this inside track. So that's a really important switch right there. That double slip allows you to go either direction. When trains are arriving in Brady Yard, and they'll be coming around, and normally I would say I would have them come around on the outside track. The train would go all the way down into here on this track next to the view block, stop, the yard switcher would grab onto the back of the train, which would have a caboose on it. It would drop the caboose off on this track here, then it would come back out and use the yard lead to do all of its classification in here. Once it's classified, then they would move the train out onto these departure tracks, which are ready to leave and go somewhere. I think I've got some crossovers at key locations that are important for operation and everything, but this is the basics of the track plan and why I did what I did. Also, one last thing: the engine is sitting here when it brings the train in. As soon as the yard switcher pulls the train off, then the engine or engines can run over here and run into servicing. Get serviced, do what they need to do there, and when after they're serviced, if there's another train that's ready to go, it's set up on one of these departure tracks, it can come back out and do its thing. This longer track right here, I kind of use that as kind of a maintenance away track or someplace just to shove some cars if Bill needed to shove some cars. But every track here has a purpose. We just didn't throw it in there because we had room to put a track in there. There were reasons for that. Now, before I go to the next slide, any questions about this from anybody?
Well, first thing, you're still staticky on your sound. But second thing, your cursor's not lining up with where you're trying to point for some reason.
Okay, now I've got it pointed over the double slip switch right now.
No, I'm looking at it's right at the bottom of the red box of SBK.
Okay. Now, what about on this?
I don't
I'm
even
using
see it.
I've got both screens. I've got two screens I'm working off of, guys.
I don't see it at all now.
Okay, that's right. Now you see it, little hand.
Yeah, it's right underneath where it says Elligerter in the red box of SBK. Well, now it says sub-row bed homosot.
Okay,
Now
interesting.
you're between the red. Yeah,
Mine, it's okay. Oh, I see what it's doing. Okay, I see. All right, I see what's happening. Okay, I don't know that I can correct that. I have two different size monitors. I got a big monitor I use for design work, and I got a smaller monitor that I'm running off of.
Yeah, I think it's more just bandwidth. You're doing screen sharing the video.
Yeah,
Two monitors, you're eating up a lot of bandwidth.
This is the only place where I wanted to try to even use the cursor. The rest of it will be fine. But
Yeah.
at least what I'm concerned about here is that everybody's kind of got the concept of why it's designed the way it is. Now, that's probably most important.
Yeah.
Okay, next slide. This is just some pictures of Bill's layout. The top picture is the power plant. That's the one that's going to be gets a lot of traffic we'll talk about. Middle picture is the yard. The two tracks you're seeing right in front of you there with the coal hoppers and the boxcar, those are what I consider to be those departure tracks. There, once the train is made up, they get put on there. And obviously the picture in the bottom right is Bill's engine service facility that's there. And those are just some pictures from his layout. Okay, pros and cons of a point-to-point layout. The great thing about a point-to-point is it actually operates like a real railroad. Trains come from somewhere, and trains go somewhere. That's all they can do, guys. They can't go. They can't just continuously run around the layout. They've got to go somewhere and come from somewhere. And I think it's much more prototypical. Each train on a point-to-point has, without question, a specific job to do. You just don't put a train out there and let it run around the main line. Like a lot, if you have continuous running. Do you get a lot of switching on an industrial point-to-point layout? You betcha. A lot of time will be spent on this layout switching cars in and out of the different industries. I project on this layout, if Bill operates the way I've got it set up, easily 3 to 3.5 hour off sessions without much question. Not because of the long travel of the trains, just because of all the switching jobs that will be done. The cons on it, yeah, there's no continuous running. That's really important for some people. You'll run a smaller number of trains per off session. The trains will definitely be shorter, and probably the biggest downside is you do have to restage the layout between off sessions. Now I'll explain that a little more as we go along here.
If I could just jump in here, if that's possible.
Go ahead.
If you could go back to the last slide, that would be great. Yeah, the no continuous running, the cons on it with the no continuous running. It's not something that I wanted when I first talked to Bill about this, and the smaller trains, I only operate 40. This layout can only hold 40-foot box cars and small two covered hoppers for the gravel and the sand. So I'm running about 8 cars per train. That's including the engine and the caboose. So it is about 8 cars, but it's the maximum amount that allows me to get a lot of things done. It may not seem like a lot having a shorter car. I know a lot of guys earlier prior to the show going live was like, they run 20 cars, such and such. But the shorter trains actually work out better. And when Bill and I first discussed this, and he clued me in on, coming from the staging yard, from the glass yard, or, making a complete from one point to the other point, basically coming back to the same and then redistributing the cars and, sorting them out, it made a lot more sense. I had my nephew over last week, and we were doing a little bit of an operation, and he kept saying, how come we can't just stop at the pasta factory? We're going right by it. Why can't we just drop the cars off? until I explained to him that we had to go back into Brady Yard, switch out, put them in the tracks, and then have them come out and do their job. Then he understood it. Once he understood the concept, it made it a lot more interesting. We only did it for an hour and a half, but I certainly can tell you that we could have went on for like 3 to 4 hours.
Okay. Now, I'm going to blow this up a little bit too for us. This is what I put together for Bill's layout. This is trying to establish how many cars he's going to need on this layout to do an op session correctly, not run out of cars, not necessarily have too many cars. So what I've done here is I've taken each industry and named it in the first column there. Second column is the track capacity. That's the maximum number of cars that particular siding or that particular industry would hold, the type of cars that would hold. As an example, for the Brooklyn gravel and sand, obviously it could be open top hoppers or it could be closed top. You could actually do either one. For the Dean Street Lumber Company, number 4 there, they can get box cars or they could get flats, either one. And that's true as we go Genco oil. Mostly they'll get tank cars, but they could get box cars in there once in a while. The next column is, do they receive or do they ship? Or do they do both? Some of these industries will only ship, some industries will only receive, but then there's industries that will do both. Take number 5, the lollipop factory. They'll get raw products in, they'll make lollipops, they'll ship them out. They could ship them out by truck, they can also ship them out by rail. The commodities. This is what helps you when you're setting up your car cards and your waybills. What is coming into these areas? Okay, obviously the lumber company there, number 4, it's going to get wood products. Again, go back to the lollipop just below it. Sugar, boxes, sticks, food coloring, lots of different things that could be shipped into there. What's being shipped out from these things? Well, you can see on the list, I've made the list there. Number 6, where it shows South Brooklyn Cement Company, that's an abandoned building. That's one Bill put on there, it's abandoned. Obviously nothing goes on with that one there. But this is just a list. Now what's important is when we get to the bottom of this list, down here, I've totaled it up. There's 48 cars that Bill would need if every siding was filled. How you tend to figure out if you need enough cars to hold a good off session, you triple the number there at any point, because cars are going to be at different locations on the layout, different things. So Bill needs somewhere between 125 and 150 cars on this layout to make the op session work correctly. Now, that's just not 150 or 125 any cars. That's dividing the cars up into box cars, reefers, flats, according to what the industries are going to get and what they're going to be using. Then the last column is simply the frequency. Is it daily? Is it weekly? When you hold an off session, one of the things you do is you kind of set a time frame. Is this an off session that is it one day, and then the next off session is the very next day after that, and you keep going that way? Or do you have a certain number of days in between? So example, anything that said daily on there, every off session, that's going to happen. That's going to, you're going to run those, you're going to work those industries, you're going to do things like that. If it says weekly, like I've got on some of them, okay, maybe that industry only gets worked once every other op session or once every 3 op sessions. It just depends on how you want to set it up yourself and how you want to do it and that. So this to me is very, very important, because it tells you what you're going to need for the layout that you've got. You actually have an idea. A lot of people might be surprised that you're going to need 125 or 150 cars on there. That's the number. Now, if you go over 150, you can get into a problem of you jam up the yard, you don't have enough room to do work. So you want to be a little careful. If I was advising Bill, I would tell him to start maybe with the low number of 125, and he can always add more cars if he has to it. Okay. Again, this is just a couple more pictures. These are the 2 big industries. the Brooklyn Sand and Gravel. The big industry is just to the right on that picture, and again the Warren Street Power Plant is going to be receiving the coal because it's a coal-fired power plant there. These are some other industries on the layout. The Brooklyn Lollipop we talked about. There's a picture of it. The Dean Street Lumber Company. There you can see cars are parked there on that. Then this is the industrial area that, Bill, what did you name that? 3rd Street?
It's just the Third Avenue warehouse.
Okay, 3rd Avenue warehouse. Well, what you see here, this is the same area, just the picture taken from a different angle. If we take the picture on the right, the building at the far back is Pillsbury, then there's Stevens Grocery in the middle, and then there's the RE Express building sitting the closest one you see there. The track, there's one track that services all of these, but we did put an extra track in because there's numerous industries. Some of them can take 2 cars, some can only take 1, but you've got to have some place to be able to sort the empties out and bring the loads in, or take the loads out and put empties in, depending on whether they're shipping or receiving at those locations. So that's why you see that extra track there with the 5 boxcars on it. The one you see at the top is a team track. Team tracks are simply anything can be dropped off there that needs. You could put a boxcar there. You could put a flat car there. Bill's got a conveyor loading system. You could actually put a hopper car there if you wanted to. It's just a team track means there's lots of different trains or cars that can be spotted there. And then what you see behind it, and then the picture on the bottom right, is the Brooklyn Cement that's an abandoned building. That's kind of a neat little scene Bill's got there. I like that idea of using that area. That was pretty neat to do that. Okay, types of trains that we're going to run on the South Brooklyn. They're all going to be industry based. This is how you decide what to run. Again, the 2 primary are going to be the power plant and the sand and gravel. Warren Street Power Plant, it's a coal-fired power plant. It needs coal, so it receives coal. The sand and gravel is the reverse of that. It ships out sand and gravel. It doesn't receive sand and gravel. So we have one that's receiving and one that's shipping there. And those are the 2, again, those are the 2 big industries on the layout. The third thing is I would have, if I was doing this, 2 general merchandise freights that would run. And those would service all of the other industries on the layout. And the general merchandise freights would have a lot of different commodities and car types that would be run. It would, again, just be a general freights that would run on the layout. Okay, now, for an op session, we've got to come up with what kind of trains are we going to run. Here's what I've got set up for that. I'll blow this up a little bit here for us. We know we're going to have 2 coal trains. We're going to have a loaded one, and we're going to have an empty one. Why do we know that? Because the power plant needs loads, and then it needs to get rid of the empties. So that's going to be 2 trains. Sand and gravel is the same thing. It's going to get empties in. It's going to ship loads out there. The merchandise freight ones are, again, 2 each on that. We'll get down to the turns down here. I'll talk about the turns in more detail here in a little bit. The turns are that you see here from 9 through 12. That's the trains that do all of the switching on the layout. The first 8 trains that you see there do nothing but, as you look over here, I'll bring this down, where do they originate, what's their destination, and again, their frequency. And as you see, take the coal, it's going to come from staging, it's going to Brady Yard if it's loaded. If it's an empty, it'll be an empty sitting in Brady Yard. They'll run over to the staging. They're going somewhere. The merchandise do exactly the same thing. We'll have 2 of them. They'll come from staging into Brady, then they'll go back from Brady into staging there. If we go down here to these turns that you see, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, they originate in Brady Yard and they terminate in Brady Yard. That's all they do. What I've listed here is about the maximum car lengths that each of those trains will probably have in cars. And this is all based on the length of the staging yards that we've got on there and what size trains I think Bill should run. So if you count engines and cabooses, most of Bill's trains are going to be anywhere from from 8 to 9 car trains. There'll be a couple of them that can certainly go up to maybe a dozen cars, but nothing over a dozen cars probably. That would be the most. I got 15 down here on the merchandise rates. If the staging tracks will hold them, we may be able to do 15. I don't know if they'll hold that many. But again, what we're doing here is we're just trying to come up with some type of operating program there of the trains. Now, this is not necessarily the order the trains were running. This is just the trains we would need to create this operating session. Okay, pre-planning for the staging yards. We've got 4 staging tracks. I'll show you a picture of that here in just a second. What's going to be on those staging tracks at the start of the op session? We're going to have a loaded coal train that's going to be going to the Warren Street Power Company via Brady Yard, not from staging to the power plant, from staging to Brady Yard. The empty sand and gravel, same story there. It's going to be going to Brady Yard. Eventually, it'll get back to to South Brooklyn. The 2 merchandise freights, they'll come in at different times of the day. As I'll say later on here, those I would recommend what I would call an AM and a PM general merchandise freights. One comes in the morning, and then in the afternoon session, the other one would run. Important things down here, which I think is important. I didn't invent this, but it really made a lot of sense to me. Think of staging as somewhere, again, out of the cloud, beyond the train room. Visible, but not part of the main layout. It's just a place where we store trains. Think of an off session, guys, as a Broadway play. The layout is your stage. The trains are the players. The staging is the areas on either side of the stage that the audience doesn't see. I think that's a good way to kind of visualize what we're trying to do here. Yes, Bill has the staging. Yes, it's visible, but I don't consider it to be part of his layout. I consider it to be beyond the train room, even though it's in the train room. Okay, we'll blow this up just a little bit here. We've got 4 tracks in the staging yard, and we've got these 2 departure tracks or makeup tracks here. At the start of the off session, we would have 4 trains sitting in the staging yard here. And I'll show you the 4 trains in just a second here, what they are. In the Brady Yard, where the circle is there, we could have 2 trains sitting there ready to leave that were put together at the previous op session that are ready to leave to go to staging, or it could be nothing there. The Yardmaster, as I'll talk about later on, could be making up trains. The point is we'll start it for sure with 4 trains in the staging yards up at the top there. That'll kick it all off, so to speak. Here, I had Bill set this up for me to kind of give you an idea. This is the staging. One way you're looking one direction, the other way you're looking the opposite direction. What you're seeing here is out on the or closest to the wall. That's the empty sand and gravel train sitting there. That's the one that's going to go to the Brooklyn Sand and Gravel eventually. The one next to it, Bill doesn't have loads in there, but when we would be doing an off session, all of those hoppers would be loaded. They would have coal in them. They're going over to the power plant. The other 2 trains are your general merchandise freights. And again, all of these trains are coming from somewhere. They're bringing products or they're bringing cars onto the layout to be used. And again, both pictures are basically of the same thing. I just had Bill do a setup for me. Okay, let's do a little job description here. The coal train. This is the way I tend to think about things. I think it makes it more real. Let's assume that the coal's coming out of West Virginia and they're bringing it up to South Brooklyn. Okay, so we've got a coal train coming from West Virginia. It's really sitting in the glass staging yard, but for the purposes of the off session, this train is coming from a mine in West Virginia loaded with coal. The coal gets taken over to Brady Yard, not to the power plant. Then this train, after its engines are serviced, picks up any empty hoppers that are sitting in Brady Yard that should be sitting on the makeup track ready to leave. The Yardmaster should have had them ready. And eventually that train, at some point during the off session, runs back over to staging with empty hoppers. It came in with full, it takes the empties back eventually. There. And what it's doing, in my mind, it's returning to the West Virginia coal mine to have those cars reloaded. There. The gravel train, you do the same thing. You can make up any story you want. It's bringing empty hoppers in from some off-layout customer that needs sand and gravel. You take the empties over to Brady, knock to the sand and gravel there. Then it picks up loaded hoppers that have been loaded at Brady, but have come back to loaded at the Brooklyn sand and gravel, and it's been brought back to Brady Yard to be shipped out. Those can be sitting on that departure track. Eventually, they'll leave. They'll go over to the station. So all we've really done here, if you think about it, we just simply switched out trains. We simply brought some loads and some empties in, and sent some empties and some loads back. Now, again, at the bottom, I keep repeating this, but I think it's important. Neither the coal or the sand and gravel trains make direct runs from staging to the power plant or to the South Brooklyn sand and gravel. All online traffic goes through Brady Yard. Everything. That's how we create that time and distance that we're talking about. General merchandise rates. Each train consists of mixed rolling stock types. There can be flat cars, box cars, tank cars, whatever is called for by the Waybills and car cards on there once they're set up. The first general merchandise could come from points west of the South Brooklyn Railroad. What that would consist of is cars that would basically have Western Railroad logos. That's how you know the train's coming from the west. A lot of the cars have Western logos on them in there. The second one could be coming from the south there, so it would have a lot of Southern Rail logos on it. That's how you differentiate the two trains there. And the same thing when you make the train, where the Yardmaster would make the trains up to go out. If the car says it's going south of Brooklyn, okay, they're probably going to have a Southern Railroad logo on it. If something's going to be shipped west of Brooklyn, it's going to maybe have a Western logo on it. This is when both trains leave Brady Yard, they are with commodities destined for points west and south of the SBK Railroad. There. Again, important. General merchandise rates would not directly deliver or pick up cars at any of the industries on the railroad. They would all go into Brady Yard. During the off sessions, both trains would run. The first would run from staging to Brady Yard. The second would run from Brady Yard back to staging, each one of the trains there. And the general merchandise trains are going to create a lot of traffic and a lot of trains on the layout. Okay. Again, I just threw this back in there kind of to emphasize the point that we've got a couple of general merchandise rates. They're going to take up 2 of these staging tracks. Now, interesting thing you have to be aware of when you're figuring out an off session, because of the Brooklyn sand and gravel in the upper left-hand corner, you're going to be taking a turn over there to switch those industries out. You've got to leave that front staging yard track clear till the end of the off session, because the turn that runs over to the sand and gravel has to be able to use that track to do its switching moves. So this is something you have to think ahead about when you're setting up the off session there. Okay. Let's talk about the turns. The turns are what gets the product to the customer or takes the product from the industry and gets it shipped out. This is what does all the shipping. Everything I've talked about up to this point is bringing things onto the layout, not distributing them on the layout. The coal turn, very simple. By now, this is probably elementary for you guys, but it takes the loaded coal hoppers from Brady Yard over to the power plant. It switches them out for the loads for empties. The empties are returned to Brady Yard. The empties are placed on the departure track, ready to leave. Maybe the next off session could leave this off session. It's totally depending on how you want to set it up. Sand and gravel is basically the same thing. It's just that they're taking empty hoppers over, they're bringing back loads. Hopefully, now that you know how the railroad's laid out, you begin to figure out here why we can have a 4-hour op session, because we're having a lot of trains moving things around, and they're using the whole layout practically to do this. We're just not running a 4 or 5 feet and start switching cars out. We're using this whole layout to create these. And this is all prototypical. You won't see in the real world a lot of trains will run the cars past the industry that's going to receive them, because that's not that train's job. That train's job is to get the cars to the yard, then they'll run these turns. The important point again, all the industries on the South Brooklyn Railway are serviced only by turns. Now, between off sessions, what Bill's going to have to do with the coal operation is we're bringing loads in, we're sent empties back out. Between off sessions, Bill has to remove the loads that are sitting over at the power plant, physically take them over, put them in those empties that are sitting in staging, flip the caboose and the engine around. That train is ready for the next off session. Now there's empties sitting at the power plant. We're all ready to do this again. Go through the same process over again the next off session. That's the only real physical thing that Bill would have to do when you're running open coal loads. I just operated 10 days ago on a layout where I ran the mine for 4 hours, and I loaded about 7,500 cars and did exactly this kind of thing. The loads were brought to me and put in a box, and I take the loads out of the box and put them at the mine into each one of the hoppers there before a train picks them up. The turns. The turns for the general merchandise leave Brady Yard with cars destined for different industries there. And they'll switch out. You could easily have the general merchandise turns. You could have 2, maybe even 3 general merchandise, depending on how you wanted to switch them out. For example, Bill's got, I think, 10 or 12 industries on this layout. We've talked primarily about 2 of them. You really wouldn't want to send a turnout that has to switch the other 10. It's going to take a long time. It's going to be too long of a train. So you start devising turns that are for specific things to do. But they do switch out of the very industries. Everything that gets switched out or picked up at an industry on the layout gets returned to Brady Yard. The car cards and the waybills will tell the Yardmaster where those cars are going, where they're destined for. And they'll all be destined for off-layout places, which again is basically staging. And again, as I put down below, I would run at least two general merchandise turns for 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. You could even add an extra, what we call an extra turn in there, which if somebody needed something or we had too many cars, you'd run an extra train. But again, each turn, in this case here, if it was an AM and PM, in my mind, would switch out 2 different industries. Okay, there's the trains that I think Bill would run. There's 11 trains that would run during an off session in his layout. The 11th one I put down as possible extras if Brady Yard gets too full. If the yard gets too full, we got to get some stuff out of there. You can run what we call extras there. But for sure, Bill would run at least 10 trains on this layout, and I can envision that being easily a 3 to 4 hour off session in doing that. Jobs on the South Brooklyn. What's the Yardmaster do? The Yardmaster controls all the traffic in and out of Brady Yard. Nothing moves out of Brady Yard, nothing moves into it without the Yardmaster. So you would have one operator that would be completely control the yard. That's all he would do is take care of the yard. He breaks down trains, makes up trains, and it would be a busy, busy job, believe me, on this layout. The staging. These would be the operators that would bring the trains from staging over to Brady Yard or from Brady Yard back to staging. Also, something I failed to mention here, which I think is kind of important. If you run this layout at scale speeds, and my scale speed would be about 25 miles an hour maximum, that creates time and distance again. So you just don't grab a train, run it out of Brady Yard, and quickly get it over to the staging. You run it at a scale speed of 20, 25 miles an hour. It takes you time to do that. The operator turns. Those are the people that take the turns out to do all of the switching. It can be the same person as the staging operator. It just depends on how many operators you're going to have at an op session. Bill's layout, because of the tightness and space, I would personally think 3 operators would be a good number to use there. One guy could be bringing something out of staging, but as soon as he's done with that, if there's somebody out there doing a turn on the layout, and we got to get another turn out there, okay, put the guy out on a turn. It's not a problem. Again, Bill could go up to 5 operators, but it's going to get pretty tight if he goes to that many. I would not suggest that. There's what I would use, and this is just simply the same picture I had in the March program I did on cars and Waybills. This is what I would use on Bill's layout. This happens to be off of my old layout, so it really doesn't have anything to do with his. But again, the first one is the car card. Middle one is the waybill, tells where the car's going, where it's coming from there. And the one on the right is simply the train card, telling what that train is going to do. That train card on the right there, Bill would have at least 10 of those, one for each train, and then maybe a couple extras for the extras that would run on that. And I think I explained all that in the last version. Okay, guys, that's it. I got through it pretty quickly here. I'm surprised. Thank you, Bill, for letting me do this, letting me use the layout, because I think it kind of gave everybody a pretty good idea of what's involved with it. I'm going to go back here and put the layout up on there in case somebody has questions about it. Any questions?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and start off here, and I'd like to remind everybody to tune into YouTubeModelBuilders.com for all the latest news, info, schedules for the live show hosted by Big Bill Graham, which is once a month. Next show is May 21st. The eMag, which is bi-monthly, and viewers can sign up for the subscription link, which can be emailed to you. eMag should be out sometime during the middle of this next month. The Thursday night, moderated by Johnny Reb from Southeast Rails. And the Tuesday night shows, this next Tuesday night show would be May 17th with Gino. All shows start at 9 p.m. Central Time. And any questions?
Well, I have one, Bill.
Yep.
And it's that third or fourth guy. First of all, those 2 guys go get the pizza and the beer.
Okay, I forgot about that.
Yeah, because there's only room for 3 big guys. If I'm in there and there's, But anyway, everything starts in the staging yard, right?
That would be the way I would do it. That's exactly right. Everything starts in staging.
So everything starts in staging. So we're thinking outside the box. Like I'm in, like right now I'm working, like say in conjunction with Gino's yard, the Birmingham.
Okay.
So I have one of his engines. So it would basically be, theoretically, it would be that train would be coming from Birmingham, Alabama, coming in, bringing a load of a gravel, let's say, from Alabama. So it would start in the staging yard, and then we would complete the circuit around the whole entire yard, the whole entire layout, and finish in Brady Yard.
Well, let's do it differently than gravel, because we basically, on this layout, my idea is we ship out gravel. Let's suppose he's bringing up flour.
Flour.
For Cannavale pasta.
Yes.
Okay, so the cars that'd be a box car that would be coming in that was loaded with pasta.
Can I interrupt here for a second?
Go right ahead.
Geek in the mix. Once the Gino's engine drops off the flour, could he possibly pick up a load of gravel to go back to Alabama?
He could. Yeah. We'll see. Yeah. Let's assume that the Gino's engine's on the layout. Okay. But one of the things that should be done on this is once that train from Alabama has brought its train in, then that engine needs to go over to servicing. It needs to get serviced and fueled and everything. And then the Yardmaster, if he knows what time that train is coming in, or what order that train is coming in, he could have already had a train build up in Brady Yard there and on those departure tracks ready to leave. Okay, how soon does it leave? Well, the engine could sit in the servicing track. If, say, we had a 4-hour op session, it could sit there for 2 hours, not run till the 3rd hour there, or it could run a half hour after it came in. That all depends on how you want to set up the op session there. And again, the only thing you ever have to worry about on this with that staging is make sure that you keep that front track open so that you can get into the gravel company to do your switching. Otherwise, you can use the tracks any way you want to. And also, the trains, you know, a train could be made up and ready to go, but it doesn't have to even go this off session. It can be run the next off session.
That's correct.
It's there's so many options on how to do things. Something I maybe failed to mention, which I think I've done in other ones, that is really important. Everywhere where there's a lot of switching going on at industries on this layout, you'll notice there's runaround tracks on them. Some are long, some are short. But the key to the runaround tracks are you never get trapped. You can never be trapped where you can't switch an industry.
You know what? One of the other things that has come to my attention, and I think you guys who have had track plans done by Mr. Baronic, you're gonna when you start playing with them, and that's what we're gonna be doing, is playing. Once you start playing with them, you kind of get into your groove. When it's on the paper and it's brought to fruition, such as Troy and Jimmy and myself, who have had track plans designed by Bill Baronic and Derek Glass and others. When it's on paper, and you guys can see this yourself, because as I have, if you're building it, you're starting to get a feel for it. But one of the things I noticed is on that plan is when I bring the train out of staging all the way around the track, and I come and I loop, like just say for example, I'm bringing it out on the outer track. It's coming on the outer peninsula, and it's coming into that double slip switch, right? One of the things I've come to understand, and it creates its own job, actually, is on the side where the warehouses are. If you'll notice, between Genco, there's a little switching area, and there's a little track that's just a couple of inches long. It's just right there. What I've designed that thing is that's where the switching engine sits. Because when that train comes in head out, what I do is disengage it and then bring it into the engine facility house, and then that switcher comes in from behind, switches over to the outer track, and then we start shoving in to the yard and start breaking up the cars, pulling in and pulling out, going across the double switch to the inner track to the outer track. So in actuality, what I've done is created another job on the layout. And once all the switching is done and put into the track, I then send that, the Yardmaster then sends that train, that single switching engine, back into that little track. And it just sits there. It doesn't do anything else. It only takes care of Brady Yard.
Well, something that can also be done here, and I when I design these, it's just automatic. I don't think about, sometimes when I do these shows, I should explain. If you're down along the south wall there, where I've got that highway overpass put in, that's the longest passing siding on the track, or runaround track. That was not just done for the heck of it. My theory on this was, if a train was coming out of staging and there was a train coming out of Brady Yard going to staging, that's where they pass each other.
That's right.
That's where they get around each other. It's right there. That's why that's as long. It's longer than it needs to be, but that's okay. It works.
Exactly. It does work. I have to attest to that. It does work.
Eric Ruthenberg asked, did you start with the industry and their locations first when you planned the layout?
Well, not really. Bill and I, this is kind of the third version of this layout. The ones that did stay the same were the power plant. We didn't change that. Originally, I had Cannavale Pasta, which is really down on the south wall, as just a background building. Originally, that was over in that warehouse district. Then Bill's the one that kind of told me which buildings he wanted, and we kind of put it together so it fit, so everything fit. Bill has done some changes that, believe me, were good changes to do here. I'm not that smart to be able to be perfect when we do those. So Bill says, can we move this here, move that? Yes, that's what we did. But Bob, I think the power plant is about the only one that was for sure. Originally, where the Lollipop Factory is, Bill, wasn't that going to be a brewery at one time?
Yes, that was going to be a brewery.
That was a brewery, and we didn't. I don't know. We even had the lumber yard. That's down in the bottom right-hand corner. I don't think we ever even had the lumber yard there at that time.
No, we had the lumber yard. The other thing that we changed was the Brooklyn Sand and Gravel. What you did was you had a mountain in the corner there, and once we went over it, we thought it's going to be like a cityfied industrial type. There wouldn't be a mountain. It would just be a place where we would receive or take sand and cement down.
Well, Bill wanted this to be dirty, grimy industry layout. That's why we've got all the tracks as close as we do and everything, trying to get that representation. It was built. The important point about this is that it was built for operation. It wasn't built just to run trains. It was for the trains to actually do something. I think we all tend to forget a little bit. We talk about these things like they're the real thing. We're just playing here, but we're trying to play in a realistic manner. Do things like the real railroad.
Yeah, I tried to use real diesel smoke in there, but the wife was like, "No, that ain't happening."
Smoked up the house a little bit.
Yeah, kind of like
With that black soot.
Yeah, kind of like upset her a little bit, but try to tell it was, it's all part of the realism.
Yeah, especially when you get coal from West Virginia.
Yeah.
Did I do okay on that?
That was awesome.
Okay.
Now, I got a question for you. If on his radiuses, I'm not really sure what they are, what is the minimum and maximum wheels that he can run, like a 4 or a 6?
Bill can correct me if I'm wrong. I think when we originally started planning this, about the biggest thing we were going to run was maybe be a GP7, GP9, all 4-axle. This is not designed for 6-axle work. There, it's all going to be.
That's correct.
There. And what I would like to see done on this layout, which would, well, first of all, some railroads allowed. It was prototypical to run either short nose or long nose forward. You could do either one. On this layout, I would love to see dual engines being run, say like 2 GP9s hooked up on front. The problem is, as soon as you use 2 GP9s, you cut yourself out about 1.5 freight cars. And since none of the trains this is all flat, this thing is all the same height, about 42 inches. He only needs one engine on there, and that. But the rule I would have, if it was my railroad, I would say the rules of the railroad is we can run long nose forward or we can run short nose. Because if the one thing that you don't see on this layout, if you guys didn't pay attention to it, there's no turnaround for the engines. There's no place to turn the engine around here. So.
Yeah, no one, sure.
Eric Ruthenberg asked, do you back into each industry?
These, the way they're set up, you would, but again, let's go down to the south wall there. Anything that's going to the Lollipop Factory or the lumber yard, if you're coming out of Brady Yard, yeah, you could just back in and do your switching. But let's assume after you get done doing the switching, now you got your engine on the wrong end to get back to Brady Yard. That's why you use that long passing siding, that runaround track, is you bring the, after you've done your switching at the Lollipop and at the lumber yard, then you'll run your train onto that passing siding. You'll run the engine around the train. You'll have to reset your caboose. That's another thing that'll take time to do. You have to put your caboose on the end. Then you move your engine to the front. Then you head back to Brady Yard. Again, all of this creates time and distance and makes the off session longer. Again, that's the reason for all of the runaround tracks. Is there's no place where you can get in trouble. So, let's use the coal mine. That's a great example. The coal mine, the power plant. When you bring the loaded hoppers over to the power plant, you've got the engine on the wrong end. So you've got to do a runaround with the engine to get it on the back end so you can switch out that power plant. There. Otherwise, you won't be able to switch it out.
All right. I got a question, Bill, for you.
Okay.
Like I already know the answer to it, but we're doing a runaround over on the runaround track at the highway pass, right?
Right.
Engine's on the wrong end, so that makes the caboose on the wrong end. So you disconnect the engine, you run it around, you grab the caboose, disconnect it, bring it back into the main line towards the end, or say halfway. Go back, hook up to the train. Once you're out on the main line, back up, grab the caboose, and then continue around to Brady?
Exactly. That's
Okay.
exactly what you would do. Right. Now, before you do all that, if you've got a dispatcher, you've got to get permission from the dispatcher to use the main line to make those moves. And the dispatcher may tell you that you can't make those moves right away because there's a train coming from staging up there. You have to wait to make the moves. Again, we've created time and distance on this. But you're exactly right, Johnny. That's how you would make the move.
Yeah, there's other sections there where they can run around too there on that same spot.
Yeah, everywhere where there's industries, there's runarounds. You can't get trapped. You got to think a little bit, but you absolutely can't get trapped on it.
And I'll tell you what, for a small room, that right there would keep you busy for hours.
Oh,
I mean, that is phenomenal as far as
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, in my mind, it would be a fun layout to operate. I would love to run the turns, where you go out and you've got you got 7, 8 cars, and you've got to drop them off, but you got to pick up 6, 7, 8 cars. And once in a while, you might have a train come through. You can't use the main line. You got to get off the line while another train comes through. There's dozens and dozens of possibilities on how this thing can be set up to operate. There. Another great example is the warehouse district there. Think about that for a couple of minutes, guys. What happens if you want to take get a car out of, say, the Pillsbury flour mill there, which is the last one in on the track? You got to move some other cars to get that out because the other cars aren't ready to leave yet, or they haven't been loaded, they haven't been emptied. So you got to do a bunch of switching around. That's why we've got that extra track there, so you can dance some cars around, move them around a little bit.
the yardman would go nuts.
Yardmaster would be very busy on this layout. Very, very busy. But that's okay. We've got guys in my operating groups that they don't want to do anything but be a yardmaster. That's all they want to do is run the yard. And when I said the yardmaster would be in control of the Brady Yard, the yardmaster would actually be in control of that side of the peninsula all the way around the peninsula where you see that number 42, that little yellow square, which is a elevation height. That would, in my mind, be yard limits on this layout. So a train coming into Brady Yard would have to stop right about where that 42 height number is there and get permission to come into Brady Yard, because the yardmaster would be in control of from there all the way into the yard. And he would control all the movements of the engines and everything. He'd be a busy guy, no question.
Big Bill, you're going to have to ask your wife to go into another room to make a little village to house all the people that work in these industries.
Nah, they're small.
So Bill's layout here, if he's running, he'll have a Yardmaster. Now, he takes care of the yard, and that's it. Now, if he's not running dispatcher, you train operators when they're doing the turns, it would be up to them to kind of do their own dispatching, right?
Well, what I would suggest, and this is what I did on my layout that I had before the one I've got now, we had sequential running of the trains. I had the trains set up so this is the order they ran in. And what we did is when someone would get done with running a train, I would simply give them the next one in line, whatever it was that was there. I acted as a dispatcher where I gave control of the main line and did things like that. But once the train got to the yard limits, the dispatcher was done. It was then the Yardmaster took over. He controlled what came into his yard. He controlled what left his yard. Once it left the yard, then the dispatcher would take over, telling the operator where to go. Yeah.
Curtis Hunt asks, now on my layout, the staging yard is one track under a mountain. So how would I run that?
You'd run it the same way. Instead of running 4 trains, you're going to run 2 trains. One would leave, one would come in. But think about what Bill's doing with this one. We're running 8 trains. 4 trains are coming out of staging, 4 trains are going into staging. So that's actually 8 trains that would be running. On Curtis's layout that I designed there, we only have room because of the size of the room for 1 staging. But that basically would be 2 trains. 1 leave and 1 go in. Now what he would have to do, because I've got it hidden, is after an operating session, Curtis would have to back that train out of the hidden, flip the engine around, if he's got a caboose, flip the caboose around, back the train back into that hidden staging between op sessions, then it's ready to go for the next one. He's ready to go. And when I say next op session, guys, I'm thinking in terms of 1 operating session per night. They're not multiple operating sessions per night.
Yeah, when you talk about AM and PM, you can do the AM at the beginning of the operating session, and the PM will be towards the end.
That's right. Yeah, I had a couple trains. I had through freights that ran on my layout, and because I had staging at both ends of the layout, so I had through freights that ran, and I had an AM and PM. The AM was one of the first trains to run during the op session. The PM was one of the last trains to run. They both basically did the same thing. They just ran at different times during the session. Also, something I think is probably worth mentioning about this one or any of them, depending on let's assume we had a 4-hour op session with this layout here, it would be very feasible to have an AM Yardmaster and a PM Yardmaster, where for the first 2 hours, somebody's Yardmaster. And then if he gets tired of doing that and wants to run some trains on the other parts of the layout, then you bring in somebody who becomes the PM Yardmaster. Then the fellow that was AM, he goes ahead and runs other trains. That's very common to do that.
With this railroad itself, could it accommodate a fast clock?
It could, but I don't like fast clocks. Personally, I don't. The reason kind of depends what you want to set it at. If you set it at 4 to 1, that can get a little quick. 5 to 1 or 6 to 1 helps a little bit. But the reason I like to do sequential on my layout is nobody's under any pressure to get something done quickly. We're not running timetables and train orders. We give you a job, go do the job. I don't care. I can give you a great example. I had the potlatch paper mill on my layout. It took up a space of 10 feet by 2 feet. There were 13 cars that needed to be switched out. And they were facing and trailing points both. My very experienced operators could do that job in about 40 minutes. real time, real 40 minutes. I had a newbie come and he says, give me the hardest job. So I give him that job. It was called the potlatch turn. At 3.5 hours, he still wasn't finished moving 13 cars
Wow.
because he didn't know how to plan it out to be able to do it. And there was nothing really tricky about it, but you had to know which cars to move first, how to sort them around and that. And at over 3 hours, he was still working.
Sort of like a chess game.
It gets to be like a chess game. Well, if you start taking people like that, you put pressure on them that they've got to get this job done within a certain amount of time. That's not fun. This is all supposed to be fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
Remember, model railroading is fun, guys. That's the logo. What the logo is.
Now, if he's running car cards on there, his car card boxes, if he was to mount them up there in the layout, would he just have an in and an out? And where would he put the car card boxes?
Okay, good. That's a good question, Troy. At the yard, there would be a car card box for every track that's there. So every track you see would have a box for the car cards. And the boxes would be labeled. For instance, the tracks in the yard, they can simply be labeled 1 through 5 or whatever, 6, whatever is there, whatever Bill has there. Number them from the front to the back, if you want. The departure tracks, the makeup tracks, there would be 2 boxes for those. That's where the car card would be put. Go out to the industries. Go to the warehouse district. Again, I would put these car card boxes right on the front of the layout, on the front of the fascia, and there would be 4 of them. Actually, there would be 6 of them there because we have the warehouse district, we have Genco Oil, and we have back in the corner there. Well, that's also Genco Oil back in the corner. We would have a box for each industry. Same thing would happen over in the corners, in the lower right-hand corner, and the same thing at the power plant. There. So he's going to have a lot of fascia boxes on this. Well, think back what I said, Troy, too, at the beginning of this, where he's going to need about 125 cars on the layout, probably. Well, that's 125 waybills.
Yeah.
That's a lot of paper.
A lot of paper.
Get
a lot
the
of
right
writing there, Bill.
Thank
And
God for printers.
Now each car has to be on the cards itself. You have to write the numbers of each of those cars on there.
So that's the car card.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Car card, yeah. Let me go back to that. I'll get back there to that. See, the one on the left is the car card. That's the car that you have. The one in the middle tells you where the car is going or coming from. There. And what would happen is during an off session, why you see the different colors on mine is because I wanted to make it easy for my operators, especially my Yardmaster. He knew that pink or rose color was for the folding turn. Well, when he was sorting cars, I had on my lap because it was much bigger. I had multiple trains coming in with cars going to Spalding, Idaho, and those all went out on the Spalding turn. The Yardmaster didn't have to worry about doing a lot of reading on there. All he had to do was block the cars for Spalding, and then when he had whatever the number I had listed, that say was 10 cars, as soon as he had 10 cars for Spalding, to go to Spalding, then he would call for an engine and a caboose. He'd make the train up. Then the person that was running the train would have to read those car cards. In this case, this car was going to the Spalding Cement Company in Spalding. Well, the person running that Spalding turn, he'd have to read these cards as to where to spot the cars. There was probably a car sitting at the Spalding Cement Company there that was ready to leave there, and so he simply would switch the cars around. This was a car that was loaded with cement that was being dropped off there. There was probably an empty that was leaving there to go back to wherever it came from. Matter of fact, if you flip that card around where it says UP East, that's exactly what it says. The card is now empty and it's going back to South Dakota. There. But it has to go through my Lewiston yard, just like Bill's Brady yard was there.
So, but there's going to be some writing involved.
Well, or you use that program that I use here, that Waybill program that I use, where it prints it for you. You still got to put the information in.
Right. And what is that program called?
It's a Waybill program, and I think it's from Shenandoah Software. That's what it is.
Shenware?
Go look at my last video when I did on car cards and Waybills, because I had it all listed there. It'll be in that last video.
Okay.
The key to it, Bill, is this: it'll print this nice card for you that looks nice, but you've got to think about what that car is going to do.
Right.
Where's it coming from? Where's it going?
Right.
Yeah, that's where the work comes in on it. And then I usually only did two-sided cards, the side one, side two, but the program will print four-sided cards, so you keep flipping it over.
Right.
And I'm kind of anal about things. I liked it because it looked nice, as you see in the picture there, as opposed to handwriting.
No,
I was able to do the coloring was very important for my Yardmasters. They loved that because they knew that the rose color was falling. That's all they had to worry about was blocking.
Right.
That's all they had to do. And for the other towns I had on that layout, they were different colors.
Right.
Yeah, I got another question up here, Troy.
Is that the professor there, Johnny?
Yes.
Okay. The professor asks, "Where's the SBK interchange with the NYCH?"
I don't even know what the NYCH is.
I think we'll have to ask Big Bill.
Ask Billy about that.
The NYCH, the New York City or New York Central. Well, there isn't any.
There is.
It's as simple as that.
You could, because instead of having those two general merchandise freights or going westbound or south, they could go another direction. You know, it's not written in stone that those cars have to, that those two general merchandise that are leaving your railroad going somewhere else. There, Bill doesn't have an interchange on this layout. The interchange would basically be the stage tracks.
NYCH is the New York City Harbor Railroad.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I know. They do that. Just to give you a little history about this, South Brooklyn Railroad is based on that New York City, the car floats. Was originally called the South Brooklyn Railroad. It was the only railroad that made money for the New York City Transit Authority, and it was operated as a real railroad as opposed to the Commuter Transit Authority. The engines that are on my layout, the red and white ones with the SBK on it, are similar to the ones that were on that were used by South Brooklyn Railroad, and they would work out of 3rd Avenue, 2nd Avenue, down to the pier where they would take in freight that would be sent over to the Brooklyn Terminal. And Brooklyn Terminal was a slew of warehouses that could take 40-foot boxcars in. It was designed to take freight. And then later in the 60s and 70s, the Transit Authority used it to bring in the brand new commuter trains such as the R44s, 46s, and the new trains. It has since been taken over, I believe, by CSX. They own that property now. I'm thinking that they do. New York, New Jersey, Cross Harbor works out of there at this present time, but they don't use it for anymore. In fact, they to come into the transit authority, they have cut it off. They put a big fence across it. But that's where my original idea came from. I wanted to mimic that as closely as possible.
Nice.
We could have taken the Brooklyn sand and gravel and just as easily made that a wharf scene there, and that could have been a lake sitting there or something. The problem that I had with doing that, if Bill would have wanted to, a lot of that takes up a lot of space, takes up a lot of track, and we just didn't have the space in this room to. We had to be careful what we were trying to do here. All of you that watched Steve Priest's show the other night, I thought it was just great when Steve was telling everyone about he builds those narrow shelves, narrow layouts. The reach is only sometimes 13, 14 inches, never more than maybe 18 inches. That's really, really important that you keep everything narrow. And as you see on Bill's layout here, the reason we've got him as much as we did here to operate with is we kept everything pretty narrow, kept it pretty small. Even in the closet area, if you'll notice, he doesn't have to reach but more than about 2 feet to get to any of the track there, because we didn't put any industries back against that wall there where it would have been hard to reach.
The professor asked, so where's the interchange in the 2nd Avenue?
Yeah, Billy, these are yours.
I know. If the interchange is not on the yard, it would be beyond the door, beyond the layout, where that would work. We can only work. We took literary license with this. It's not exact to that, but we took a literary license with it, and we use the imagination of where the interchange would be and how it would come into play.
The problem we would have with doing interchange on this railroad is you do need the interchange. When it's interchanging, you need a train to come from somewhere, preferably hidden staging, comes out of hidden staging, it gets to an interchange track, drops off its cars, picks up what it's supposed to pick up, and then goes back into hidden staging. That's how an interchange works. We did not have the room to do that on this layout. We could have done it, but we would have sacrificed things that I thought were more important.
Okay, like on my layout, I'm learning a double deck. The room that I'm sitting in right now is a 12 by 12. I've got a helix in the corner, which will take me up to my 2nd level. Is it common to have a double staging yard on the upper and lower? Because once I go into the main room, I've got to go through a wall. So that wall is going to make it like the trains leaving New York, coming to West Virginia, and then one leaving West Virginia going to New York.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I'm planning on doing here on the next show, which will be in July, I think what I'm going to do is go to the next size layout from Bill's. Originally, again, I did just a simple logging camp and sawmill. Now we've done a little more complicated one. My next one is going to be one that will probably have multiple staging yards where the trains really do disappear, and what happens, how the trains interact with each other. The fact that you've got it on 2 levels, that doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. I designed a layout from one of the guys that is doing YouTube stuff. Bill Imbrisi, is that his name, Bill Imbrisi? IMB.
Yeah, in BC.
Yeah.
Phil Imbrisi.
What I designed for him was a 4-level layout: bottom level, top level staging, middle 2 levels scenic on his, and we had multiple helixes on his. That would be a good layout sometime to do an op description of, because there your trains really do come from somewhere and go somewhere and completely disappear. You really get the feeling your train is gone somewhere. But I hope I answered that question for you.
Yeah, you did. It just amazes me how much you two got in that small room.
Yeah, well, what happened originally with Bill, if you guys remember, go back to some of his first videos, he had basically a ping pong table layout. It was a big ping pong table layout, but it was a ping pong table layout. And I've been in this hobby for 40 years, and I know that everybody that builds that kind of layout eventually gets tired of it. They eventually gets boring to them because the trains are running around in circles, or they don't have any really something to do. When Bill gets this operating system up and running, nothing will move on this railroad without a purpose. It's supposed to do something. You're just not running trains.
Okay, I've got a question for you. I've seen on some layouts that they have a passenger train that constantly ran.
Mm-hmm.
Does the passenger train have right of way all the time?
Yes. Well, it depends on what era we're talking about. If we're talking about back in the 40s and 50s, absolutely. They were considered the class one on the railroad. Everything else had to, get out of the way for them. I took a trip about 4 years ago from Vancouver, British Columbia to Banff on a train. We were on the train for about 12 days, not sleeping on the train. We were sleeping in different places. But that was about a 15-car passenger train. That was an excursion train that ran. And it was really interesting is we pulled off into sidings so that coal trains could get by us. Now, coal trains are the lowest class train on a railroad. They have to get out of the way for everything else. Well, because we were an excursion passenger train, we had to get out of the way for the coal trains. So we spent a lot of time on that trip sitting on sidings waiting for trains to go by. Now, for me, it was great. It was fun because I loved to sit and watch those trains go by, take pictures and everything. But it's kind of funny. I probably never said this to you guys, but we're probably the only group of people that when we're in a car, when we come up to a crossing and the train's coming by, we clap.
True. Or get the camera out or a video camera.
We're that happened to me yesterday with my wife. We were out shopping and we were getting ready to come home, and I come up to where I live here in Colorado. I come up to it, and all of a sudden the arms come down, the lights went off, and I says, "Oh, great, a train!" I says, and unfortunately it was only about a 40-car train. It wasn't very long, but and we smile when that happens. Everybody else is is cringing and groaning, not us.
The professor says, understood. It just keeps surprising me as I keep seeing that SBK red 70-tonner with the low cab and SBK and keep thinking, so where's the NYCH bit? With a little wink.
No, you're right. You're right, Professor. That SBK worked that Second Avenue and into Bush Terminal for many years, and I think they shared that with the SCH, the NYCH. I remember as a new motorman, in order to work the SBK, you had to have a file number digit of 1. I had what's known as a zip code for a file number, and I went down there one day to work, and these guys had like 40-some plus years, and the guy told me, his name was Santos, he said to me, "Kid, this is the real railroad." And he was absolutely correct. My job was to throw flares out onto 2nd Avenue and stop the crazy gypsy cabs from trying to run into the train. It didn't work too well.
Well, another thing too that I think is worth mentioning, and Andy's going to get mad at me at this. That's okay. I can live with that, Andy. One of the things that Steve Priest said the other night in the show that I thought was really important is to think in terms of proto freelance. Use a proto to get to do the believable part, but give yourself enough leeway so that you don't get yourself all locked up in, well, I've got to put this switch in this location, this has to be this way, because most of us don't have the kind of space to do that kind of thing. So when I designed this for Bill, I wasn't trying to design it for any specific railroad. I was just trying to get him as much operations as he could get in the space that we had to deal with. It turned out pretty good. I think he's happy with it and everything, but we weren't really shooting for a prototype railroad. I don't like to. My biggest problem I have with my design work is the Pennsylvania guys. I constantly, when I do ones for Pennsylvania, they tell me, well, I want to go from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh. Well, thank you very much, but most of that track from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh was 3 tracks, and in some areas it was 4 tracks wide. How could we ever depict that unless we had a 10,000 square foot space to work with? You just can't do it. So I tell all those guys that are doing Pennsylvania, they want to do that triple track main line, don't think about that. Think about the branches that run off of that, because there are some really cool and neat branch lines that come off of between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh that you can do some really design and railroading.
I think that what happened was with this layout, what I did with this was I gave Bill the footprint. I think the original layout that Bill talked about that was in my basement was based on the model railroaders July 2009, the beer industry, the beer line, and I based it off that. But when this room became available to me, I just gave Bill the footprint of it. I had no intention of where we were going. Once he designed it, and he came up with the design and originally when Bill first sent me the original first plan, he actually designed it to be a runaround. If you look at where the door is and the staging yards, it curved. We had a drop down piece that went across the door and a drop down piece that went across the closet, and in the closet was a staging yard, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
And I told Bill that I wasn't, because my only egress and degress was in through the main door. There's a window where the bridge is, but I wanted that freedom to come in and out without, and I wasn't really crazy about the runaround. So that was changed, and Bill came up with this idea. And then the second thing was in the walk-in closet. That closet is a 4x4 piece of property, that walk-in closet. And Darren Brady, who the Brady Yard is named after, he said, because it was just originally the brewery and then that wraparound track, the curved track that came around. And Darren said, that's a waste of space. You can put another industry in here and do that. And that's when I went back to Bill, and Bill came up with the lumber yard and the 2 tracks and the whole 9 yards. And so they were a lot of modifications. I think we went through 7 different plans before we arrived on. But like I said originally, this was the footprint that was given to him, and then from that point on afterwards, once the track was laid, then I came up with the idea for the industries, picking and choosing and taking from what I know, from New York.
If you guys have questions on anything else besides Bill's lab, I'll be happy to try to answer. If I don't know, I'll tell you.
Okay, when you design it, okay,
Bill,
I'm gonna get a.
You were breaking up there.
We lost you, Scott.
Oh, I thought I stepped on somebody. I apologize. If I get a hold of you and I give you a dimension of a 20 by 12 room, you design me a plan. Is that the bench work, the all the way up to the finish what I'm seeing here?
I don't do the bench work. The reason I don't, there's so many ways to build bench work. And I just don't want to let you guys do your own thing. Now on Troy's, I did do some of his bench work because I had him so confused about L-girder bench work that I went ahead and designed him some of his bench work, not all of it, but some of it. The problem is, if I start designing bench work, I put in L-girders and that, it's real expensive. That takes a long, long time, guys.
Yeah, he had me really dumbfounded with mine, I'm telling you.
So, we finally got it worked out.
Oh, yes.
But yours is a complicated layout, Troy, so that's understandable. But on your point that you mentioned about prototype build, and actually a couple of those points. No, I am a prototype modeler, and I am one of the crazy ones. I wouldn't recommend this path for anybody. It's craziness. I enjoy it, and every other layout I've ever built has been freelance or proto-freelance around a fictitious railroad when I was young and the LED later. But I really went over the top with this one. But I wouldn't recommend that for most people. I would always recommend proto-freelance. Find a railroad you love and kind of model it a little bit after it. Try to capture its flavor, but do your own thing. And the other, several other points you'd have is like modeling something that's too large. Yes, you love it, especially a 3 or 4 track Pitsy mainline. I can't imagine what the staging alone for that would be like. Let alone the number of trains and all the complexity that it would take to do that. There's a few people who've pulled that 4-track Pitsy mainline off, but they're short runs, etc. I mean, even the 2-track N&W mainline that I love, famous Pocahontas district, I didn't model it because it's just too hard to pull off. I picked a sideline, and that I would encourage anybody else to do the same thing. But prototype modeling, while yes, I am absolutely right down that line, I don't recommend this to anybody. I love it.
Andy, it works good for me to a certain extent if they want to do prototype, because I've got a lot of books and we've got the internet. I can go find out what I need to find out to do it. But you do start limiting yourself because I don't care how big a room you got, you still got to.
Well, what I liked is all the decisions are made. Well, if you're a prototype modeler, all the decisions are made. All you're doing is replicating. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to get it right. You don't have to figure out what would the railroad do. I don't have to have a track plan, for example. Sorry, I would love to have one of your track plans. They're awesome. I love what you do. But the N&W has designed my track plan for me. All I had to do was fold it around the room. Prototype makes all the questions answered, if you can find the history. Now, I will tell you, it's really hard to find. You'll be surprised how much stuff is lost to history when you try to go back to 1950 and try to figure out all the details of what was there. It's very difficult. And I'm a diehard prototype railroader. I still have to make a whole lot of stuff up. I mean, I could guess that a lot.
That's right.
Andy, can you reboot, please? Chris, I'm getting an echo out of you. That's the reason why I muted you. Chris, your audio just went like
it's easy for you to say.
The chipmunks have kidnapped. Yeah, the chipmunks have kidnapped. The chipmunks have kidnapped him and stole his laptop.
Curtis Hunt asked, the hardboard divider, should I paint it white before painting it blue?
What I did with mine is I painted it all with kills first, and then I come back with the blue I wanted to use. And that. If you're using masonite, I like. Well, see, my layout is both masonite and styrene. I've got a company here in Fort Collins that does Fort Collins Plastic. They sell styrene by 5 by 10 foot sheets, and then they cut it. So my layout's a combination of styrene and masonite. Both of them, I prime them with kills and then put the blue color or the fascia, if it's a fascia, the green color that I want. Use the kills.
I really like the styrene. I'm really kind of in love with the styrene. I've always used hardboard, but the styrene is gorgeous. I'm using aluminum flashing for my backdrop.
Bill.
I don't like to pay the price for it, Andy, but the great thing about it is this company cuts it for the dimensions that I want. Then we just roll them up into rolls, put them in my car, and I bring them home. And they're so light, they bend easily. I don't like sharp corners on layouts. I like to have curved corners. You see my plans most of my corners. So with styrene, it's very easy to curve them and get them to do what you want to do. But
Hey, Bill, go ahead and
it's easy to get good gaps.
Bill, quit screen sharing so we can clear your audio up.
You talking to me?
Yeah.
I can kill the screen share.
Yeah. Let's see if that'll clear your audio up. You're breaking up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, you just turn your screen share off altogether. Just put it back to your camera. Yeah, there you go.
All right, let me go in and see.
Free up some of your bandwidth.
There we go. How's that?
Yeah, we'll see how it's going. Chris, I muted you earlier because your audio just sounded like the chipmunks bad. How is it now? Mr. Chris. I guess we
stepped away.
No, I got him here.
Messing with his camera.
Yeah, he may have to refresh, get his audio back up.
Told you the chipmunks kidnapped him.
Yeah. Can you refresh, Andy? Because we're getting echo off. Please.
Sure.
So does anybody have any other questions here for Bill?
I could have done that good a job, believe me. No way.
All right, here we go. We got, there's your something there, Troy.
Oh, let's see here. Aren't there much? Oh, it just popped up. Hold on. Oh, you didn't click on the answering part of it. Greg Gilbert says, I have a room that's 12'9" by 13'4", and I'm trying to design an SP in Oregon. I was thinking of doing a multi-deck, but have never done it. You just moved on me, Johnny. Can it be done without a helix?
Not a double deck because of the length that you're going to. If you have a space of say 15 inches between decks, I used to remember the number. It's some crazy number of feet that you'll need. Yeah, when you watched Steve Priest's the other night, yeah, he said he has a 1.5% grade between levels, and then at each town and each switching area it's flat. What he kind of glossed over was that layout is 3,500 square feet. And I wish he would have said if he knew. I'll bet it took hundreds and hundreds of feet for him to get from one level to the other level in that layout.
I think.
Oh yes, most definitely.
I think he said his room was 65 feet long and 50 feet wide.
Yeah, and what you're not thinking about too on that is he's doubling back because he had a lot of. When you look at that track plan, there were a lot of peninsulas with turnbacks and that. So I mean, it takes a well. Chris, do you have a helix on yours?
Yes, he does.
That's right, he does have a helix, doesn't he?
I've got one.
Yeah,
Robert.
You got a small one, Robert.
Yeah, yours is really small, though.
Is it really?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, we got you, Chris.
Okay. So yeah, there's a helix over there.
Well, what's your spacing between your levels?
4 inches, railhead to railhead.
No. I mean between the main level and the upper level, not the helix.
I've got 18 inches clear between the lower deck and the bottom supports of my staging deck, which is You can actually see I put the third deck on now. There's
Yeah.
so the staging deck is sandwiched in between them, and the staging is all accessed by the helix, which is basically the end of a point-to-point layout. So the helix is not included in operations other than to get from staging to either the upper or the lower level.
Yeah. Well, 18 inches is a good number to work with. I try to maintain a minimum of about 15 inches. A lot of it, too, depends on how wide your bottom level is going to be and then how wide you're going to have your top one. If you're
because it actually varies. You can see I got a little bump out there, and on the back wall, that's 20 inches. On the side wall, that's, varies from 24 to about 30 inches in the yard down there.
Sure.
And then, but I took it where you stood from an angle, and if I put a fascia that covers the joints or the joists on the staging deck, you can still stand right up close to it and look all the way to the back without being blocked by the fascia. That's how I picked that height.
The only concern you'll have with yours, Chris, is if you have any vertically challenged friends that want to operate.
Well, the third deck is strictly mainline running. There'll be no operations up there.
Okay. Yeah. But on my layout, mine's 4 levels, and what I did is on the second level, my third level, my upper level, the top level is just staging for me, but on my second level, I've got a couple guys that operate that are not very tall, so I put all tortoises up there with LED panels with LED lights. So all they have to do is flip the switch and see which way to turn. They don't have to get on their tippy toes to try to see the.
Yeah, the only thing they'll have to deal with, and it'll actually be done by the dispatcher, is at the top, at the summit, there's a start of a passing siding, and there'll be a lot of meets there, but that'll be all controlled by the dispatcher or CTC anyway, so there won't be any switching. It's strictly mainline and running with passing sidings. So.
Well, I'm a big fan of the Montana Rail Link. My only problem with them was there wasn't enough, what I felt was enough switching to build it. If you wanted to build the viaducts, the curved turns, and everything that were there, I mean, it's a gorgeous area up there. I've studied it, and I'd love to model it, but there wasn't just a lot of switching once you left Helena.
Yeah, that's the whole reason I'm doing it, because I actually, have plenty of switching in my career already, and I really found out what I enjoy doing best is running long trains with lots of locomotives. So, and beautiful scenery. So that's a perfect excuse to do something like the Mullen Pass.
It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect to do that. No question.
No, see, like here, CSX runs right across the road from me, and they'll pull 50 to 100 coal cars to the head, to the loadout. But on the way back, they'll have two pulling and one in the tail. And then when they're leaving, there's 2 loadouts here in front of me, one within 20 miles of each other. It goes from 2 main lines down to 4 siding tracks to where they can break them cars down and not block any of the driveways or main roads that they pass.
Yeah, that's a good thing to keep in plan into your operations too, because if you do grade crossings with roads and use the 10-minute rule while you're switching, that adds a little more time. Like Bill likes to add time into his operation. That's another great way to do it is, okay, you've got to break a train so you don't block the road while you're doing your switching. And then you got to come back and couple back up. Like he was saying, that coal train is broken 4 times, so that's, extra operations to extend your time.
Oh yeah, and it's usually about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Well, Alan McLendon was also one of the things he says, don't try to reinvent the wheel. If you're having a problem figuring out how to do something, just go see how the real railroad. They'll tell you. You don't have to reinvent anything.
You know, and today with all the sound locomotives too, it gives you a good excuse to blow your horn or your whistle, you know, for those grade crossings instead of just doing it randomly. You know, teach your operators to actually blow the correct sequence before they cross the road.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah, these guys down here at the loadout, they see me coming, they lock the doors.
Well, for about 6 miles here in Fort Collins, the Burlington main line from Cheyenne to Denver runs right through the middle of Fort Collins there, and runs right through the middle of the university too. And they blow that horn. I live almost 2.5 miles from the track, and I can hear the horn at night blowing as they're going through town. Because they have to. The feds will get them if they don't.
That's true.
Yeah.
Me and Andy, we live within 30, 40 miles from each other, and it's weird. In that distance, CSX runs this area, and oh my goodness, blind moment. What the horse on it?
Senior moment, Scott.
Yeah.
I'm getting to the point where it's a senior moment if I'm not having a senior moment.
Northern Southern run down his way.
No.
Well, Bill, thank you very much for coming
You're
on and going through this. I know I've definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure that Big Bill here has learned a lot about his own layout and how to operate. I think I kind of caught him there, maybe taking a few notes there, maybe.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, let me ask a question from you guys too. If I continue doing these and just kind of progressively go up with a little more complicated layouts, kind of build it up over the course of time here, I would like to do that because I think everybody can learn from them, because there's operations. You know, the way that Chris does his with that layout, running the long trains, that's one way to do it. You know, just about every layout you can do it a different way. Would you guys like me to continue this, and we'll use different layouts each time?
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Yeah,
I think it's great.
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't want it to get to be repetition. That's why I'd like to pick. You know, I can pick different layouts to do, and just kind of progressively get them a little more complicated each time. Their build up.
Even if you just find different styles, that's the main thing. Expose everybody to different styles.
Well, Lloyd Hawk has asked me to do one on his, and I promised him I would do it. But his is really, really a big layout, and we're going to have some real operations. I told him I'd like to wait a little bit when he gets a little further along with it. We can use the track plan, but his is, I wouldn't say it's complicated, but there'd be a lot to talk about. I'd like to kind of build up to one that size at some point as we do this. Hopefully people learn from it. I hope.
Oh, most definitely. So I'm still trying to learn about mine.
Oh, I've learned a lot just by what you did with Big Bills.
Yeah, it's good. Good presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate it, guys. It's fun to do, and I like to do these kind of things. There's a lot more to this hobby than just put the track down and run trains.
Amen.
Well, I'm going to interrupt for a second here, and David, excuse me, back earlier in the show, y'all were talking about Waybills and all. That was shenware.com, SHENWARE.com/Waybills. That's the software.
Yes, and also David Stewart and the professor actually posted a couple of links that are up there in the Q&A as well.
Yes.
For some different stuff.
Yeah, pertaining mostly to the New York Harbor.
Well, I'd like to go ahead and thank everybody for coming onto the panel, and a special thank you for the track planner here, Mr. Bill. and Bill Graham for letting us go ahead and check out your layout and be able to learn more about it. I'd like to remind everybody to keep checking in with the YouTubeModelBuilders.com for all the latest news and schedule info for the live show, which the next live show is May 21st, hosted by Big Bill Graham. And go ahead and if you guys have anything, go ahead and get some articles out to the eMag. JD is always looking for some good articles. You guys do not need to know how to write or anything else. He does a wonderful job on editing. You could be completely dyslexic, and I'm telling you, this man will figure it out and get you a great article inside the eMag.
That is so true, Troy, because I've written mine in crayon, and he's done well.
The eMag will be out sometime in the middle of this this month here. You can also go ahead and sign up on the YouTubeModelBuilders.com for the to go ahead and get the eMag. Actually, go ahead and email right to you. Don't forget about the Thursday night shows hosted by Johnny Reb. And the Tuesday night shows, this next Tuesday night show will be with Gino. The show is actually to be announced, so I do not know exactly what it is, which is May 17th. All our shows started up at 9 p.m. Central Time. So please go ahead and tune in and keep checking the YouTube Model Builders website for any of the details and stuff of what's going on. Once again, thank you very much, Bill, both Bills, for letting us look at your layout and describing it and really going through all this track planning, the car cards, the Waybills, the operations. It's greatly informative.
Glad to do it.
No problem. Thank you.
Excellent show. Bill, Track Planner, I have a question for you. Just looking at Chris's layout, do you recommend automatic throwouts or hand throwouts?
Oh, say that again about turnouts.
On the turnouts, do you favor tortoises or the hand throws?
On my layout, the main level is hand throws. The upper level is all tortoises. But again, that's because of the height situation, where some of the people can't see the turn. So all of my upper level has got tortoises. My main level, which is about 41, 42 inches, all has hand throws. I'm modeling 1955, 1958 in that era there. So there would have been a lot of hand throws back then. So I like, the reason, I think I said this once before on one of the other shows, the reason I like hand throws, we're back to that time and distance thing, where when they got to throw them by hand, it creates time. It slows people down.
Plus, you got to pay attention to where your train's at.
Got to pay attention. That's right.
Yeah, I'm doing, like, down in the yard there, I'm doing hand throws. Up in staging, I'm using servos because they're low profile and they won't stick down and, you know, hang over my lower deck. But then I also have some tortoises I just put in on the helix just because I had them. You know, I've got a return loop track on the helix. I needed a pair of turnouts, so that's kind of a mix of everything, but I enjoy the hand throws the best, and when I have guys over here operating, I get comments on that a lot. It's like part of the switching operations is somebody having to go throw the turnout. And I like to run two-man crews where one guy is throwing the turnout and telling the engineer what to do, just like they do in real life. Now there's a helix. Wow. Robert.
Just saw that, huh?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
What is the height of that?
That is 36 inches. 15 revolutions.
Wow.
That's for in
I want
scale.
to tell you, Bob, you have more patience than anybody I've ever seen in my life.
And I'm
That's
not
like-
even a doctor.
That's only a few more reps than what I had it at.
Yeah, it's 3 more. Yeah.
3 more reps. So yeah, I think I was like at 10 and a half.
Yeah, something like that.
I built a 6-turn helix, and I was so happy when I cut that last piece of wood. I thought, oh, man.
Oh yeah, I was really happy when I cut my last piece too.
I bet you were.
I'm gonna be tickled pink when I hit my fifth one.
Well, Troy did most of the work, and I just had to reassemble it and cut all new pieces of wood and expand the height so I could run double stacks and everything else in there. But you know, it worked out perfectly. I was real surprised with my track planning.
It's impressive. It is impressive. No question. How long does it take to go top to bottom? You ever figured this out yet?
Well, if I go max speed on my DD40, it takes about 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's what if you ran scale speed, it'd take about 9 to 10, 9 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, pretty close. It takes a while.
Yeah, I bet. You've really created time and distance there.
Yes. Yeah. It's 170 feet of track.
Yeah, did it shock you how much flex track you were going to need?
Yeah, I was kind of shocked when I did the calculation. I was like, what, 170 feet?
Yeah, but that's the comment I get when I send these designs to people, and they start. You know, I send them a bill of materials list on how much flex track they're going to need and what turns they're going to need. But you know, sometimes look back and say, why am I going to need that much flex track? I says, well, figure that helix I designed for you. It takes 5 pieces per turn.
Mm-hmm.
And I says, if we've got 5, 6 turns, you got 30 pieces right there.
Yeah, and HO, it's what, 5 yards of
Yeah.
track.
Yeah, it's amazing. Just amazing.
Whenever you're ready, Troy.
All right, guys. Thank you very much again. It's been greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for all you viewers, all the questions, and everything else. If there's anything you guys want to go ahead and more know about or want to go and watch again, this will be a posted video. And tune in again. We'll be posting some more shows here on every other Tuesday. Remember, all shows are at 9 p.m. Central Time. Thanks again, guys. It's been greatly appreciated. Have a great evening.
See ya.